Miller admitted that even she didn't fully understand how good Clark was until she spent time with her.
Recently coached the WNBA All-Star Game. You spent some time with Caitlin Clark.
Best coaching job ever.
Best coaching job
Best
ever.
coaching job ever.
Being around Caitlin Clark, how was the experience for her? She's such a big star. I mean, the sky's the limit for her. To be around her, just talk about the type of person she is, how much she loves the game.
I'm going to be honest because it needs to be said.
Clark broke the record in 4 years, just like Kelsey Plum before her. She didn't even use the extra year of eligibility she was granted due to COVID. And if all that wasn't enough, Swoopes flat out said Clark wouldn't dominate in the WNBA.
I know people are like, oh my God, you said she wouldn't be good. But I didn't say she wouldn't be good. What I said was I didn't think Caitlin or Angel would come into the league and dominate immediately, which I don't think either of them did.
But the moment Caitlin led the league in assists and won Rookie of the Year, suddenly, Swoopes went silent. People wanted Caitlin Clark to fail. They wanted to see her struggle so they could justify their hate. But Clark didn't just survive her rookie season, she thrived. And Cheryl Miller, one of the greatest basketball minds ever, made it clear. Clark's presence has made the entire league better. And here's where it gets even crazier. Miller wasn't just talking as a former player or a media personality. She had firsthand experience coaching Clark at the 2024 WNBA All-Star Game.
Holy smokes. What an opportunity. And I was excited, like really, really excited, till I found out that the team I'm coaching wants to beat the brakes off our Olympic team. I'm like, okay, the pressure's on. So now we got a game, folks. We're going to have a game, but it's been fantastic.
She saw what Clark could do up close, and it changed everything. Miller's firsthand experience with Clark at the WNBA All-Star Game changed everything. She saw something in Caitlin that made her rethink what's next for the Indiana Fever, and her revelation sent shockwaves through the WNBA. So why was Miller's response so devastating? What did she see in Clark that her critics refused to admit? And what does this mean for the future of the Fever? Let's break it all down. Cheryl Miller didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she validated her greatness in a way that no one else has. But it was what she said off the court that might be the most powerful moment of all. After Indiana's first win of the season, Clark was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. The expectations, the criticism, the media storm, it was all closing in, and Miller saw it. So she walked up to Clark, gave her the biggest hug, and told her, "I'm so proud of you. Savor this. Use this as a formula, but no matter what, keep being you."
He was getting hit with everything left and right, and I just said, I hugged her, I said, I'm so proud of you. I go, savor this, use this as a formula. I said, but keep being you. I said, no matter what, keep being you.
And in that moment, everything changed. It left the entire basketball world stunned. Cheryl Miller wasn't just impressed by Caitlin Clark. She saw something bigger, something that could change the future of the Indiana Fever forever.
Caitlin don't need a screen. Caitlin's got great handles. The one thing that I don't think people really appreciate about that young lady's game, she can pass the ball.
She can't pass. She got great assists.
From the collegiate level to now, and it's working. And it was only a matter of time. And great narratives, great storylines, but now the bottom line comes down to one thing. It's about basketball, and it's about wins.
It was about passing the torch. Miller sees it. The league sees it. The world sees it. Caitlin Clark isn't just the future of the WNBA. She's its next generational leader. And with her leading the charge, Indiana's rise isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. She knew exactly what Clark was going through. "I know what it's like to be hated." Miller opened up about how, as a dominant black woman in basketball, she had also faced resentment and backlash in her career. And for the first time, someone with real credibility said what needed to be said.
I can't imagine this young lady, I don't want to use hate, but despised.
Miller saw it firsthand. She saw Clark stepping up under pressure despite the endless criticism. She saw Boston establishing herself as an elite post player. She saw Mitchell proving she's one of the best scorers in the league. And most importantly, she saw a team that refuses to back down. That's why this is bigger than just Caitlin Clark proving her doubters wrong. This is about the Indiana Fever becoming a real contender. And Miller made it clear, The WNBA better start paying attention.
that she's wearing right now.
Right.
And it wasn't something that she anointed herself. It's something that's been placed on her head, and I hope people understand that. But it's everything that she's dealing with.
And Miller made it clear, Clark isn't just a great scorer. She isn't just a flashy passer. She's a once-in-a-generation talent. And what did Clark do in response? She looked Miller in the eye and called her coach.
So watching her and just spending a little time. And one thing, guys, that I've learned is to step back and let these kids be themselves.
And that's where Miller separated herself from the critics. Instead of pushing false narratives, she actually took the time to evaluate Clark's game and what she saw. A player with elite passing, vision, and leadership, the exact skills needed to build a championship team. To understand why Cheryl Miller's words hit so hard, we need to look at how this all started, because for months Sheryl Swoopes has been obsessed with Caitlin Clark in the worst way possible. It began with Swoopes pushing a wildly false narrative. She claimed Clark was a 25-year-old playing against teenagers in college, trying to downplay her dominance. The reality? Clark was 22, the same age as most seniors, but instead of owning the mistake, Swoopes brushed it off, acting like it was just exaggeration. Then, she shifted her attack to Clark's shot selection, claiming that Caitlin was a selfish volume shooter who jacked up 40 shots per game. Again, this was completely false. The actual number, 22 shots per game.
Caitlin Clark right now probably takes about 40 shots a game.
And people just having, she brought some on herself a little bit because she's cocky for a good reason.
Confident.
And I love that about her. But to watch the dynamics and the media, they had their narrative. And I was pleased and proud to see the narrative wasn't the truth.
Clark isn't hated just because she's a great player. She's hated because of the media narratives surrounding her.
Because we get exposure. Everybody forgot Lynette Woodard until Caitlin Clark broke her scoring record.
And coming from one of the greatest basketball minds ever, that means something. Miller didn't just praise Clark's individual talent, she was blown away by the entire Fever squad.
But I will tell you one thing.
Recently coached the WNBA All-Star Game. You spent some time with Caitlin Clark.
Best coaching job ever.
Best coaching job
Best
ever.
coaching job ever.
Cheryl Miller just destroyed Sheryl Swoopes in a way no one saw coming. The Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever play the game, didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she called out the hypocrisy, the misinformation, and the non-stop criticism that has surrounded the young star. Miller didn't just clap back at Swoopes, she humiliated her. And what she said about Caitlin Clark, it changed everything. The basketball world had been waiting for someone with real credibility to step in and call out the non-stop attacks on Caitlin Clark. And finally, it happened. When Cheryl Miller walked into the All the Smoke podcast, she wasn't there to play nice. She had seen enough. And in just 2 words, she took down Sheryl Swoopes' entire argument. Big dummies. Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever play the game, didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she called out the hypocrisy, the misinformation, and the non-stop criticism that has surrounded the young star. Sheryl Swoopes has been on a campaign against Clark, making outrageous claims, twisting narratives, and downplaying her impact. But Miller, she wasn't having it. She stepped onto the All the Smoke podcast and torched Swoopes' arguments, putting every critic in their place in just 2 words. Big dummies.
Respectfully, there is absolutely no way, even when we're trying to sit here and play semantics about dominating, there's no way that anyone could ever leave this season in saying that both Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese didn't dominate. You would have to further explain what dominance means for you to not sit here and say that a player who is leading the league in assists while averaging 19 to 20 points didn't dominate that season.
I'm going to be honest because it needs to be said. I can relate to that young lady, and I felt for her. I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be a black woman and hated because of my color.
Watching her pass, I didn't know how talented she was and how well she sees the game. Defensively, a lot better than I thought. I had to give her credit.
watching her pass, and I didn't know how talented she was and how well she sees the game in a 3D version, thinker. Defensively, a lot better than I thought, and gave her credit for.
She did this while sitting on Angel Reese's podcast, acting like she wasn't biased, while continuing to throw shade. And the basketball world took notice. Eventually, the backlash was so strong that Swoopes was pulled from broadcasting an Indiana Fever game. She was replaced by Nancy Lieberman, who immediately called out the nonsense, saying, "You can have your own opinion, but you can't just make up stats. Facts matter."
However, 24 years old.
I'm just glad that these young ladies who are at the upper tier players, I hope and pray that they have a solid foundation. And they know, guys, who they are. Because you know how vicious it is out there.
Miller admitted she didn't expect their basketball IQ to be this high. She knew they were talented, but the way they understood the game at a deeper level, that's what separates good teams from great ones. And that's why Miller's comments weren't just about Caitlin Clark's success. They were about the Fever's rise as a potential dynasty.
What they've done for the women's game.
They're fearless. And that's something no amount of experience can teach. Miller saw it firsthand. She saw Clark stepping up under pressure despite the endless criticism. She saw Boston establishing herself as an elite post player.
Heavy as a crown.
When Cheryl Miller walked into the All the Smoke podcast, she wasn't there to play nice. She had seen enough. And in just 2 words, she took down Sheryl Swoopes' entire argument. Big dummies.
With that being said, you big dummies, you getting paid now.
Right.
Everybody now has an opportunity to pull up their chair and have a seat.
That was Miller's response to the critics coming after Caitlin Clark.